It's good 80 brew, baby. What is up? You should be boy Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander. Back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. As always, the deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As well as I'd really appreciate it if you'd like, comment, subscribe, interact with the video. Check out the links down in the description. I'd really appreciate it. Today, we're talking about our Orzhov Bats commander from Bloomburrow, Zoraline Cosmos Caller, a 3-mana 3/3 bat cleric with flying and vigilance. It says whenever a bat you control attacks, you gain a life. Whenever Zoraline enters or attacks, we can pay a white and a black and gain 2 life. If we do, we return target non-land permanent with mana value 3 or less from our graveyard back to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. The one thing I really like about Bloomburrow is all of these tribal commanders aren't just bat creatures deck or raccoons deck. The one thing I like about these commanders is they're giving us ways to build the decks. It's not just about the type they care about, but also a way to interact with something else. So here, Zoraline cares about bats attacking and we gain life, which is great. We can pay off life gain. We can use life gain. Life gain's a great thing that we can do. But not only that, but Zoraline's going to bring permanents back from our graveyard. Now, it puts a finality counter on it, meaning that the next time that thing would go to the graveyard, it goes to exile instead. We do have some ways to kind of take those finalities off or move them around to try to do that over and over again. But most of the bats we care about are underneath 3 mana value, meaning that she should allow us to get bats back. And not only that, but that means we can load our graveyard with things for Zoraline to bring back, so we don't have to cast them, we don't have to play them. And that's also important to think about as we talk about what we're going to do. So we're talking about some of our bats, we're talking about our life gain payoffs, we're talking about how we can put things in our own graveyard for Zoraline to bring back without having to cast them, and then ways we're going to try to get those finality counters off our permanents or advantageously put them elsewhere. At the end of the day, I think Zoraline ends up becoming more of a life gain matters commander than anything else. We're going to try to really pay off that life gain and make sure that we can use it for our advantage. But as far as bats go, again, there aren't a ton of bats. There are some nice bats, like Aclazotz is a cool bat. It's a 5-mana 4/4. It says whenever it attacks, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent who can't, you draw a card. It has flying and lifelink, so it's going to gain some life back. So it's kind of got that life gain triggered down pat. When the opponent discards a land, we make a 1/1 bat. And when it dies, it comes back on its land side on the back that it has. I think Aclazotz is great. It's a great body for us. It's expensive, but hey, forcing our opponents to discard is pretty cool, and we could potentially net a couple bats from it. Basilicus Creature is a 2-mana 1/2 flying bat, but it has Extort, which is a nice ability for us because it says whenever we cast a spell, we can pay a white or a black, and if we do, each opponent loses a life, and we gain that much life. This is a great way to staple that life gain onto other things we're already doing, and getting that incremental life gain and then life loss for our opponent over the course of a turn. Courier Bat says when it enters the battlefield, if we gain life this turn, we can return up to 1 creature card from our graveyard to our hand. What I like about Courier Bat is 2 things. One, that's a great ability to have when it comes in the first time we cast it. But this is also a really great thing to have if it comes back off of Zoraline's ability and gets us another creature back to our hand that we don't necessarily need to bring back with a finality counter or is too big to bring back with Zoraline's ability. Deep Cavern Bat seeing a lot of play in Standard at the moment, but at least is at minimum an interesting card. It's a 1/1 bat with lifelink. It can look at an opponent's hand and take a card until it leaves the battlefield, which isn't as relevant in Commander's other formats, but I still think it's good, and it does have lifelink, which means it's going to gain a life when it attacks with Zoraline out, and it's going to gain a life when it hits. Dirge Bat is a really fun card from Mycoria. Seeing a return here. Can pay for 4 mana for it, or we can mutate it in for 6 mana, and if we mutate it in, we can destroy target creature or planeswalker opponent controls. The mutate cost is kind of high, but hey, we can flash it in, which is also nice. At the end of the day, it's probably just a 4-mana 3/3 body that's going to be decent in the air. Grimclaw Bats is one of my picks for probably one of the bats that's not going to look very good until you remember what our deck's trying to do. So it's a 1/1 flyer for 2 mana, which is pretty meh, right? But for a black mana and paying a life, we can give it +1/+1 until end of turn. And with how much life gain we have in the deck, I feel like we're going to have the spare life sitting around to make Grimclaw Bats pretty big if we need it to. If we have the spare mana laying around, we can make it big and make it useful. Life Creed Duo from the new set is a Soul Sister effect for our deck. Whenever the creature enters, we can gain a life. Pretty useful when we start talking about all the life gain abilities we have. we will happily take it. Same thing with Malcure Familiar beside it. Whenever we gain life, it gets +1/+1 till end of turn. What I love about this is the more bats you have out at once with the Malcure Familiar, the bigger it's going to get before you even get to blocks or damage, and I love that. Moonstone Harbinger, whenever you gain or lose life during your turn, bats you control get +1/+1, gain Death Touch until end of turn. This is pretty cool because every turn we should be getting Death Touch as long as Zoraline's out or we have other things out. We're going to be gaining life. Our bats are going to have Death Touch, making them potentially harder to chump block, especially if you're playing your bats into higher powered flying decks like Angels or Dragons. This could make your opponent potentially think twice about blocking your bats, and we just need to make sure that we're taking advantage of that lack of blocking on our opponent's part. Ruin Lurker Bat, another 1/1 with lifelink that says when you being your end step, if you descended this turn, scry 1. So if you have a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere, and that is a non-token permanent, we get to scry 1. That's pretty helpful. You know, there's ways for us to sacrifice our own things for benefit. And the scrying is okay. What I really like is this is a 1/1 lifelinker that's going to end up being 2 life with Zoraline out. 1 for it, and 1 for Zoraline. A card that isn't a bat, but I think looks really good in this deck is Skeletal Vampire. This is a 6 mana 3/3 vampire skeleton. So very odd. But what it ETBs, we make 2 bats with flying. And for 5 mana, we can sack a bat to make 2 more bats with flying. And then we can sack a bat to regenerate it. This is a little bit of a mana sink, right? 6 mana to bring it out, 5 mana to make 2 more bats. But what I like about this specifically is that's more bats for more life gain triggers. And with so many life gain triggers in this game, you want sometimes just more of them. Each of those 1/1 bats attacking could be our opponent losing a life and us gaining a life. It could be a counter on a creature. You know, there's so many things that those life gain triggers could be that I think that mana eventually becomes useful. Desecrated Tomb works so well with Zoraline's ability. Remember, when more creature cards leave our graveyard, we make a 1/1 bat. So if we're bringing bats back from the graveyard, we're making a bat to join it as well. And that's nice for, again, more life gain triggers, more of that. We will have ways to buff bats as well. It's not like all these bats are just going to sit here as 1/1s. But the point is that more bodies means more life gain triggers off of Zoraline. So let's get into our life gain triggers. What can we do with the life gain? Well, you have fun threats like Amalia Benavides Aguirre, which you're going to just, whenever it gains life, you're going to explore, and then when it hits 20 power, it destroys all other creatures. Gives you a long time to get there, to get to 20. But again, when you explore, if it's a land, you put it into your hand. Otherwise, you get your choice. Keep it on top or bin it, and the creature that explores gets a +1/+1 counter. This is just going to help us churn through our deck, get to the right things, and potentially just start getting those lands into our hands so we don't have to draw them. Alendris Hierophant is a fun creature that kind of works with what we're trying to do. Whenever we gain life, we put a counter on it, and then whenever it dies, we make that many 1/1 vampires with lifelink or X power. This is really fun because it is a life gain payoff, and then when it dies, we make a bunch of 1/1s with lifelink. We can get Alendris Hierophant potentially back with Zoraline. Now, when it dies the second time with Zoraline, it's gonna potentially get exiled, but that's where our counter shenanigans at the end will come in hand. Karlov of the Ghost Council is a really fun card. I got to play with this one in a recent Sorin deck that I tried out, and this worked really well. Whenever you gain life, you put 2 counters on Karlov. So Karlov's going to start getting big, and for 2 mana, you can remove 6 counters from just to exile target creature. The fact that you can do this at instant speed makes this really helpful. It allows us to keep 2 mana up and do that at the opportune time. Because, I mean, all we need is, if we're attacking with 4 bats, Karlov just got 8 counters, and it's going to get really helpful for us. Marauding Blight Priest is one of those ones where we want as many bats as attacking as possible, because whenever we gain life, each opponent loses a life. So, hey, we gain 1, they lose 1. And these type of, whenever we gain, opponents lose abilities are our bread and butter for this deck. These are the things we really want, because that chip 1 life over time is going to come in handy when we're not the only one trying to damage our opponents. We're in a format where 3 other people are trying to play their game, and some of those people are going to be trying to get into combat. And that little chip damage can do more than you think it could. We're going to play Sorin, because I think Sorin on both sides helps our deck out so much. On the front side, it's a 1/4 with lifelink and has Extort again, and we can Extort multiple times. In the beginning of our post-combat main phase, if we gain 3 or more life this turn, we can flip it. And when it flips over, it has Extort as well, which is great. Turns into a Planeswalker. The +2 can make us food, which is a way to gain some life if need be. The -1 just deals damage equal to any target to the amount of life you've gained this turn, which means the more life we've gained, the more threatening that is. And then the -6 just gain controls of a target creature, makes it a vampire, and puts a lifelink counter on it if we control another white permanent. Sorin on the backside, I think, really strives well when you can pair its Extort with its -1 to just dole out some damage when people don't expect it. Sorin is not the key to our deck, but it feels really good when Sorin's sitting around. But, well, let's be honest, anytime you talk about life gain, these are the 3 cards you're going to see, and you're going to see them more often than not in a life gain deck. The first is Veto over on the left. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. And for 5 mana, we can give all our creatures lifelink. We have the same ability, but in an enchantment, in Sanguine Bond, whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that life. And then, well, the combo goes with it that it's going to end the game is Exquisite Blood. Whenever opponent loses life, you gain that much life. All 3 of these pieces are really great on their own. If you had one of all 3 of these, I think you'd be very happy, and you'll end up still getting so much value. But if you pair either of the ones on the left with the one on the right, you will win the game because you're just going to start a loop where an opponent loses a life, you gain that life, make an opponent lose that much life, and unless anyone has a way to stop it, it's just going to keep going and drain all your opponents out for game. At the end of the day, I don't consider these to be that rough of combos. This at minimum costs me, 8 mana to do, 10 if you do it the traditional way. I really don't see a way that someone's not going to see this coming and have a way to stop it. And if you win this way, I think it's kind of fun, although some people may not feel that way. As far as loading our graveyard goes, there's a couple ways we can do it. Buried Alive just lets us put 3 creatures from our graveyard or library into the graveyard. This is great because then we can load up stuff for Zoraline to bring back. Unmarked Grave can actually put any non-legendary card into our graveyard. This could be great if you want to go get something like Black Market Connections or a key enchantment, that triggers when you gain life or cares about life gain. I like that it's not just a creature for Unmarked Grave. You can just go put anything. And remember, Zoraline doesn't care what it is as long as it's mana value 3 or less. But as far as counter removal goes, we want to make sure that we have ways to care about those finality counters if we're going to bring things back. The middle card, Solemnity, well, just stops them from being put on altogether. They can't be put on creatures, artifacts, enchantments, or lands, meaning that anything we bring back just comes in without the finality counter, and that's a win-win scenario. Solemnity will stop us from putting +1/+1 counters on any of our creatures or doing any of those shenanigans, but it will also stop our opponents from doing that same thing. This is going to stop poison strategies. This is going to stop counter strategies. This is going to stop planeswalker strategies. This will shut down a lot of things. And the hope with playing Solemnity is that by playing under this condition, we can benefit and hopefully stop our opponents a little bit in the meantime. Yes, there's always going to be a little bit of bad manners. There's always going to be a little bit of hate from your opponents when you stop what their deck is trying to do. But Solemnity is one card in the deck. We're not trying to find it, although we can with Unmarked Grave, right, and things like that. We're not trying to find it. But we could do that if that's what we really want to do. And my advice would be is if you're playing against a deck that really cares about those strategies, if you see the Unmarked Grave, nuke it into your graveyard, get it back with Zoraline, and allow yourself to build that time. Because as much as I want to posit every deck that I make that this is the best deck I've ever seen, I don't see Zoraline being the best command I've ever seen. I think it's fun, it's really thematic, but at the end of the day, you need something to keep yourself around, and I think Solemnity does it. Power Conduit lets you once per turn remove a counter from a permanent you control, and if you do, put a charge counter on a target artifact or put a counter on a creature. This just basically means take the finality counter off, put the counter on a creature, congratulations, now your creature's not going to exile when it dies. And then Nesting Ground, which is a land, lets you move a counter from one target permanent to another permanent. So that means the finality counter has to go somewhere. You could put it on Zoraline. Zoraline's just going to go back to the command zone anyway. I mean, it might be the best threat for it. Just stack up finality counters on Zoraline if you want to, but I think there's still ways to move them around and get rid of them if we can to allow us to bring things back multiple times, potentially. I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my first shot at Zoraline, and I think there's a lot of things that can come with this deck from, one, playing it a couple of times and understanding how it play runs, but two, determining your budget. I try my best on the show to not make the budget too high on these decks because I know that everyone wants to spend a high amount of money. And 2 of the cards on the screen I thought were just a little bit too expensive for what I think they want to do. The first is Archangel of Thune on the left. Last I looked, we're between $35 and $40 for an angel that says whenever you gain life, you put a counter on each creature you control. That is a great ability, especially in a deck like this with how many bats we could potentially have attacking. The problem is that's one card that we can't bring back with Zoraline. We pretty much just have to draw it naturally. And for some people, that might be too much. For the people, that's perfect. Grab it for the deck. Entomb, This is another one of those unmarked grave style abilities, except we can just put anything we want into our graveyard. Again, a great way to get Solemnity in the graveyard, so we can do it. And Tomb just sits at about $15. So if you think it's worth it to have another one of these abilities to get Solemnity or another thing into your graveyard to get it back, go for it. I think it's well worth it. In the slot, again, I was just trying to find a way to pinch a little bit of the budget. And then Whip of Erebos set at about $12 the last time I looked. Just giving all your creatures lifelink feels really good. That means more lifelink triggers, more life gain triggers, more things to take advantage of. And it means we're just gaining more and more and more life that our opponents have to deal with. The tap ability can return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gets haste, and we exile it at the beginning of the next end step. So it is a way to reanimate a little bit, but it's basically there just for the lifelink. And the question is $12 worth the lifelink to you? If it is, I think it comes in and it makes sense. But again, I was trying to put my money in the budget into other cards that I thought fit what we were trying to do a little bit better. Well, let's get into the playtest. Keeping a 4-lander with a Deadly Dispute Cleric class, which is a card I didn't talk about in our life gain payoffs simply because there was too many. If we would gain a life, instead we gain that many life plus 1. If we go to level 2, whenever we gain life, we put a counter on our creature we control. And when it becomes level 3, we return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. We gain life, which was tough. This is a house of value, and we'll happily take it anytime we can see it. And then Savine's Reclamation, another way to bring something back from our graveyard. Return target permanent with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And if it's flashback from the graveyard, we get to copy it and do it again. This is a great way for us to get things back without, again, having to risk the finality counter. But let's get into turn 1. We see another land in the Fetid Heath. Pit of Offering says it comes in tapped. When it enters the battlefield, exile up to 3 cards from your graveyard. You pay 1 in to get a colorless mana, or add 1 mana if any of the exiled cards is color. So it's kind of an odd land. Can end up being colorless or colored depending on when you see it in the game. I think we saw it just a little bit early here, but that's okay. And then we have Vaulto Fjord to destroy a land and get us a treasure. This is important to shut down people's value lands like Field of the Dead and things like that our opponents may have that they're going to use for good value. We'll get the Fetid Heath down here. I guess we could have played that Cleric class last turn, but I wasn't thinking about it. We'll play it here since Zoraline's 3 mana. I mean, we've got nothing to do quite yet. Moving to turn 3, seeing Veto, which is a great draw. That means we're going to potentially start having some fun. I kind of like just jamming out Zoraline here. We'll try to play Veto next turn and potentially get some damage in, but obviously, nothing else. I'd like to try to save that Courier Bat if I can to get some more value from it. We don't necessarily need it right now. Of course, no mana to pay for Zoraline's trigger when it comes in, and nothing in our graveyard, right? So wasn't really going to do us any good. Play that Fjord, and I guess there's 2 ways we can think about this. We can either level Cleric class up and get a counter on Zoraline, or we can play Veto to hit somebody for 1. I think I'm going to just go ahead and tick the Cleric class up. Attack with Zoraline, we're going to gain a life, putting a counter on Zoraline. So now Zoraline's up to a 4/4, so it's going to be a little bit harder to block here on turn 4. But hey, now we're in good shape. Again, nothing to reanimate, so nothing coming out of the graveyard. But now we have this little engine that's working our way and it's going to help spread counters around. Radiant Destiny, a great way to buff all of our bats and give them vigilance if we have the City's Blessing. I kind of think it's probably time to get another bat down. I think we kind of waited a little bit too long here. So I'm going to put the Courier Bat in. Again, nothing to bring back, so that's okay. Attack with Zoraline. I'm going to put the counter on the Courier Bat, just so that way it's a little bit bigger. Get in probably the same person for 4 if I can. I mean, Zoraline could have hit for 5 there, but that's okay. If you want to go that route, you can. I do like to spread it a little bit, just so that way all of our bats get slightly bigger and we're dealing more damage every time. Turn 6, get that Isolated Chapel in untaps. We've got 5 mana. I've got enough to play the Radiant Destiny. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're just 1 permanent off Vigilance there. We've got the Reanimate and the Deadly Dispute. I would love to Deadly Dispute maybe something like Courier Bat, just to draw some cards, get a treasure, potentially set up something on another turn. So we'll play the Radiant Destiny, calling bats, of course. So now all of our bats have +1/+1. And I think I would just go to combat and attack. We're going to gain 2. I'm going to put both the counters on Zoraline just to make it a little bit bigger, so it's up to a 6/6 now. Good damage there, good damage off the Courier Bat. And I think what I'd probably do is pass the turn, leave the mana up to maybe think that People think that I might have removal or something, and I think before it comes back to my turn, I would just Deadly Dispute the Courier Bat away to draw 2 and make a treasure. Reason here is I can get the Courier Bat back, right, with Zoraline. I just want to try to find a way to push my strategy forward. And look what I just found. I found one half of the combo in Exquisite Blood. So now if I can find a way to get Veto and Exquisite Blood down, all I need to do is attack with Zoraline, and that's the game. So we'll come into turn 7. I've got 6 mana to my name, and I need... right, like I said, we need 8 mana to get it down. So what I would probably do is try to save Veto for as long as possible, right? We don't want to do it quite yet. 6, 7, 8, 9. So if I play any permanent, we're getting the City's Blessing. So I think about this 2 ways. We could either Exquisite Blood this turn, or we could Veto plus like Savine's Reclamation to get the Courier Bat back, but that, it doesn't necessarily make sense to me. I would probably just Exquisite Blood here. Move to combat, attack with Zoraline. We're going to gain a life from Zoraline, which would make make a counter go on it. Now, Zoraline's a 7/7. We're gonna the treasure was still only been at 7. Hit somebody for 7. That'll gain us 7 life, and then we'll put another counter on Zoraline, right, with the Cleric class. And now I think we're in really good shape. We've got the Village Rights up in case somebody tries to just remove Zoraline and we want to get some value. We can always draw a couple cards with Village Rights if we want to do that. Remember that we just need an opponent to lose a life and Veto to be there to gain... Veto be there so they can gain that life. It doesn't matter how we choose to do it. We just need to make sure that we can. I just realized we did have the 2 mana to bring the Courier Bat back. But that's okay. I think we're still in a good shape here. If our opponents are smart, they'll potentially be sniffed onto the fact that we have this coming. But just for the purposes of showing how this would work, Pit of Offerings, we're not going to choose to exile anything. I'm going to play Veto. And I guess I'll play the Power Card. And then move to combat. Zoraline will attack, gaining us a life. Whenever we gain life, target opponent loses that much life. We'll pick an opponent to lose a life. Exquisite Blood gains us that life back. Veto makes them lose it, and as you can tell, this is where that loop would start. I know someone's probably going to interact with that combo, but I think it's fun just to show it once. We're all on the same page about what we're looking for. Playtest 2, we got 3 lander with no white, which is something to keep in the back of our hinds. Bantu's Monument. Good way to get some incremental life loss and gain Village Rights, Ruin Lurker Bat, and a Roaming Throne. Roaming Throne's in here because getting doubles up on those life triggers feel like it'd be pretty darn good. All we're needing is some white mana here and we can have some fun. And we draw a Snowfield Sinkhole. This is a tapped snow duel, so this is great. This gives us our white next turn to play something like Ruin Lurker Bat. And again, that's okay because Zoraline is 3 mana. Hidden Necropolis, we have both the hidden lands in here. There are a card or 2 that care about bats and caves. I just didn't really find it to be all that useful for what we're trying to do. So we'll just bring that in tapped since it's going to come in tapped anyway and get that Ruin Lurker Bat down. We'll come to our next turn. We'll play that Swamp and we see Amalia. So here's an interesting option, a way to get, so when we start gaining some life exploring, I'd love to set it up this turn and we could get a life gain off the bat, but I also kind of like the idea of getting something like Bantu's Monument down and start that process. I could put Amalia down and hold up Village Rights instead, if somebody tries to get rid of like Ruin Lurker Bat or I want to get some value. Let me think about this. I like the idea of Zoraline and just gaining 2 this turn and just kind of, flushing up for next turn where we could play Amalia, plus something else. I don't know. Let me think about it. Is there a world where we can... Black, white. We don't have enough to play Zoraline and Amalia next turn if I play Bantu's Monument. I guess I'll just play Amalia this turn, leave up the Village Rights, attack in, gain 1 life. We'll move to the next turn. Well, I guess that would have made my decision for me. We see another plane, so that would have meant that we could have played Zoraline and Amalia off of this Bantu's Monument. But that's okay. I think it's just high time to get Zoraline down now. Attack with the bat to gain a life. We're going to explore. That is a land. It'll go into our hand. And Warlooker Bat will get in to gain us that life. So we're at what, 1, 2, 3, 4 life, probably. Go to our next turn, play that Fetid Heath for turn. Now we see Sanguine Bond, right? 1/2 of our potential fun combo. I can't get Roaming Throne and anything else down, but I could get Roaming Throne down and hold up the Villager Rights. So let's do that. We're going to come bring Roaming Throne down, and we're going to call Bat. I don't want to call Vampire. I don't necessarily want to wipe the board yet. We'll call Bat because I kind of just want to gain more life. We'll move to combat, attack with both Zoraline and the Ruin Lurker Bat, which is going to gain me 4 life gain triggers because a Bat attacked twice, right? And that's going to go off 4 times. So we're going to get 4 Amalia triggers. 1, see Moonstone Harbinger. So I have the choice here. I can put it back on top, and I'm basically going to have the same Explorer trigger, right, happen 4 times. Or I can pitch it and keep digging. I mean, I think we're good on mana. I'd like to have another Bat, so I'm just going to put it on top, and Amalia is going to get 4 counters. And we get some chip damage, probably 1 more life there, which is going to explore us again. We're going to keep it on top, get her right when Ruin Lurker connects, and we're going to finish there at 7. And we'll come back to our turn. That's that same, right? That's that same Harbinger we saw off the top. So now we have a chance to potentially get some more triggers. I'll Bantu's Monument here. It makes it cost a little bit cheaper. And I'll pay, let's see, pay the 2 mana. So I still got that 1 mana up for Mudflat, or for the, sorry, we can leave, what, if I go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So we should be able to leave that black mana up for Village Rights just in case. Everybody's going to lose 1, and we're going to gain 1 off of the Monument. We see Courier Bat. I'm willing to keep that on top just to get another Amalia trigger, at least for now. We'll move to combat. Remember, Roaming Throne is a Bat now, so it can attack and trigger the Bats. And I think I'll just swing out because Harbinger's going to give them all Death Touch. So this is now 5/4 with Death Touch on the ground. I'm going to get 6 life gain triggers, right? Which means 6 Amalia triggers. Trigger 1, it's the Bat again. Here's what I'll do. I'll go like 4 in with the Bat, just so I know I can get a couple counters. On Explore 5, I'm going to put the Bat in the graveyard, but it'll still get a counter. And then on the 6th one, we see an Orzhov Signet. We'll leave it on top. So Amalia is at 14 power. Probably wanted to attack this turn as well. Not a Bat, though, so won't get Death Touch. But we're getting dangerously close to that 20 life threshold. Probably good to pay attention to. But again, some great chip and damage here. We get that... Orzhov Signet. I'm going to try to like Village Rights the Ruin Lurker Bat just to draw 2. I want to see if I can get into something else to help me out here. I mean, I didn't. The Arcane Signet's okay. The Orzhov Signet's okay. We have Cover of Darkness, which basically means that our Bats couldn't be blocked except by black creatures or artifact creatures. Sanguine Bond probably makes sense here, right? Pay 5 into the bond. Now whenever we gain life, target opponent loses that much life. I could have done the Arcane Signet or that before I did the bond, so we'll do that. Move to combat, attack with our 3 Bats, and we'll attack with Amalia. We have to be slightly careful here that we don't want Amalia to hit the 20 just yet. But we have 6 triggers of the Bats attacking, so that's 6 life gained. The opponent can lose 6, and we'll start the Explorer train. We see Flare of Fortitude. A great card, but I think I'm going to put it in there because I kind of don't want Amalia to go off. Deep Cavern Bat, we'll put it in the graveyard. Again, my hope is we hit at least 1 land. Generous Gift. The removal could be good. I mean, we're at that point where we're in a good state, but I'm trying to dig here. 3 more triggers, and if we don't hit Karlov's great too. I was going to say, at this point, I think we're just going to end up hitting 20. I really don't want to. I can bring Karlov back with Zoraline, though. So let's put it in the graveyard. Got 2 triggers left. Really need to hit a land. Aclazotz. Aclazotz would be great, though, to play off the... We're just going to keep it on top, and we'll just go ahead and destroy all other creatures. As much as I don't want to... put Zoraline back in the command zone. As much as I don't want to, I really like Karlov, and it's going to be really good once we rebuild. Amalia domed somebody for 20, so somebody took a big hit. And then this next turn, we draw that Aclazotz. We don't have enough. Do we have enough mana for Aclazotz and Zoraline? We do because of the. We actually do because of the monument. So we'll Aclazotz and Zoraline. Everybody's going to lose 2. We're going to gain 2. Amalia goes off. Oh no. Oh no. She. On the Aclazotz cast, right? She's going to explore, and we explored a land, which means she's going to destroy Aclazotz. No, that's okay. We'll turn it over. We're going to try to cast Zoraline. We might run into the exact same problem. Oh, we're good there. We'll bin the Pretender. It'll get the counter. So thankfully, destroy all other creatures again. That kind of sucks. So the Aclazotz, we can flip it back over as long as we have 1 or fewer cards. But again, here we're just going to rebuild again. Use the bond to dome people out. I think you can kind of see where we're going there. But let me know. What do you think of Zoraline down in the comment section below? Interesting deck. A lot of life gain payoffs. I'm sure we could play into it a lot more after we test it. But I'd love to know, are you going to give Zoraline a shot? What do you think? And I will catch you guys next time.